Welcome sports fans to GenX Classic Sports, where we bring the nostalgia of our sports-filled youth into the present day. Grab your favorite retro jersey, crack open a cold one, and let's stroll down memory lane together.
Welcome back, everybody, to GenX Classic Sports. I'm your host, Sean Enos. I just wanted to hop on here before the interview starts with today's guest and just tell you that, I didn't get into the podcast thing to tell personal stories. Honestly, I'm a history buff and I love sports and sports history. Seemed like a good place for me to spend some time, doing something creative. But this is a special occasion. This is something that I wanted to do a podcast episode about because I wanted to talk to this guy, and I wanted to talk to him not only about his career, but I was also trying to establish that he and I kind of went through something with a lot of other people together that was tragic, and that the anniversary of that is going to be 40 years ago in a couple of days. You should be hearing this for the first time on May 18th. And what we're going to talk about as part of this podcast happened 40 years ago on May 20th. And so it's heavy material, and it's about the passing of a baseball coach, my baseball coach, and many others, former baseball coach. But Gordon was our sports writer who covered us, and he did a fantastic job. So I wanted to talk to him about his career and just sort of go through what happened 40 years ago. And I hope that's not too heavy for people. But anyway, I want to recognize the fact that Coach Boland's no longer with us. Coach Hucks is no longer with us. Mrs. Boland is no longer with us, and sort of dedicate this to all of my teammates from 1986 and all the alum who have played for Coach Boland and Coach Hucks over the years, and many of whom we've lost, of course. But I want to also say that even though a team lost their coach and some people in town lost their friend and the school lost a teacher and a coach, more important than all of that is that two of my teammates lost their father. And so I can't talk about this without mentioning that, Coach's two sons, Sam and Roy, they're the ones that lost their father that day, and Mrs. Boland lost her husband. So I just want to mention that I'm well aware of that. So there's no, I don't make any money on this podcast. I'm not capitalizing on someone else's tragedy by any stretch. I just thought it was a story, and the people involved deserve to be mentioned and commemorated. And so, 40 years is a long time, but Gordon Paulus, great guy. He's going to join me. And thank you for joining us. And I hope you enjoy our talk with Gordon Paulus. Thanks for tuning in. So, Gordon, please, I know now that you grew up in the town that I currently live in, which is really, really odd. I had no idea until literally a few weeks ago. So you grew up in Bryant, Arkansas. Talk about how that led you, if you don't mind, into sports writing, maybe.
Well, yeah, and it was in Bryant because my dad, as you had heard, was a teacher there. He was a journalism
Yeah.
teacher, and we actually had the only high school newspaper in the state that printed out once a week. That quickly,
Wow.
and we did it on an old, stenograph machine where you type in and then you put the ink on and print it out. And so, I did that, all 4 years in high school. And an interesting note and I was doing stories for it, and we built a new stadium that opened up in Bryant High School in 19 I think it was 83, the spring of 83, no, the fall of say 82. And we opened it up. We beat Benton for the first time in our school history, kind of like, smack over beating
Wow.
Junction City for the first time, that
Right.
year that we're going to talk about. And I actually got up in a plane with the Benton Courier newspaper photographer. He was also a pilot, and he wanted to get an overhead shot of the new stadium, going into the season. and he had me. I was working as an intern for the Benton Courier at the time in the summer. So I'm flying up there with him, and all of a sudden we're over the football stadium. He says, "Here, hands me, the handle for the steer the plane," and he leans out of the window of the airplane with his camera to get some pictures of the stadium. And I'm here, I'm kind of flying the plane. So, so we ran the photo. We don't run photos much, in the Mimocrat paper, but that was kind of my, start of my journalism career. And then I went to the University of Missouri and got my degree in journalism. It's one of the best schools in the nation there. And my dad, kind of followed in his footsteps, although he was a teacher. His dad was actually a printer at a newspaper and stuff. So newspapers was always kind of in our family, and just always loved sports. And when I got out of college, I worked a year in Weatherford, Oklahoma, and then a year later in '84 came to the El Dorado News Times, and spent 4 years there. Uh, and then actually went back to Oklahoma to Muskogee, which was owned by the same company that owned the Pensacola newspaper here near where I live, because I wanted to get down here. So that was kind of my end to get in there, and came down here in 1989. And one more interesting story about that. I know the day that I came down here in '89 because I'm pulling a U-Haul with all my furniture in my car, and it's raining all day hard from Arkansas down to Pensacola. Pull into the hotel, go get like a 6 pack of beer. The World Series was starting, the Bay Series between San Francisco and Oakland. Turn on the TV to watch it, Rex. The TV goes out. Earthquake in Oakland, and so that's the day I came to Pensacola, and have been here ever since. I was working for the News Journal here in Pensacola for 15 years, the last 10 as sports editor, and then in 2004 I joined the Gulf Power, the power company here, to work in communications. It was about 3 months before Hurricane Ivan hit and devastated this area. So, so yeah, that's
Wow.
my journalism experience.
Well, I just want to jump in for the folks who don't know that are listening and say that Missouri. I was going to ask about that because it is one of the gold standard universities for
Yeah,
journalism,
yeah,
and I was waiting to hear you say that because I honestly didn't know, and I was hoping that's what you were going to say because it's very prestigious for the whole
yeah,
journalism
hmm
field. So
yeah,
kudos to you, man, leaving Bryant, Arkansas, and going to Missouri. That's awesome.
yeah. It was a big change for. Yeah.
Well, Bryant was much smaller then, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's grown quite a bit since you've been gone, as you well know. So you were
yeah.
leaving a small town, right? And going pretty good ways away. So,
And I never would have thought that Bryant would have won 7 straight football championships either. That's what they've done here in the last few
my
years is
son
just
was on
incredible.
my my son won 2 rings out of 3
Really
years.
great.
They were the senior class that failed this streak and
Oh
lost.
no.
but
Yeah,
but they won it, before that. So
yeah,
several. So he's got 2
yeah.
massive rings to show off
Great.
for that. So we've had fun with that around here.
Yeah.
All right. So you end up in El Dorado. Now, how exactly did you end up deciding was that just an effort to get back into the state, or any
Yeah,
thoughts there on how that
yeah,
happened?
a little bit of homesickness, real early out of college, not fully mature yet, if you want to call it that, and just the opportunity came back to get closer to home, and even though it was 2 hours away from Bryant, it was still closer than 6 7 hours to or probably 8 to Weatherford, Oklahoma, on the west side of Oklahoma. So yeah, it just was an
Yeah.
opportunity, and they have a 2-man sports staff, so the sports editor hired me there, and then I don't know if it was how long it was, probably a year or so later he left, so they elevated me to sports editor.
You were
You know,
young. You were very young.
oh
You
yeah,
were not much older than some of our players.
yeah. What I basically when I came, I was about a year out of college, basically. So yeah, I was still learning.
Yeah.
Uh, I showed you that photo earlier.
Yeah. You're 22 or 23 years old covering 18-year-olds.
Exactly. So I had to learn quickly how to handle interviewing athletes because I didn't know as much, and obviously, you know, even today, athletes aren't used in high school to being interviewed and things like that. So yeah,
Right. And let me say, I've always said this when it comes up. The El Dorado News Times had an outstanding newspaper back then, and the sports, considering before consolidation, when a lot of the small schools rolled together, considering how much
Right.
territory y'all covered in Union County and beyond, depending on who the opponents were and all the things that were going, y'all did a fantastic job with it. And I know y'all farmed out work to different people for to help you with different schools to travel, and I know how that went back then. But man, y'all really did a great job covering high school sports. It was top notch. You don't see that everywhere.
Well, yeah, in these days, the local coverage is kind of, all but disappeared. I see it here in Pensacola, but I mean, yeah, we would not necessarily focus on the big programs like El Dorado, but we knew, Junction City had a great baseball program, so we were going to cover them. I went to Strong many times to cover games there. Huttig, I remember even going to Huttig, and Smackover and
Hmm.
Northland. They're just bringing back towns that I hadn't thought of in years.
Yeah, Union. Don't forget
Yep.
Union. They
Oh
had
yeah,
the
Union. Yeah, great basketball program. Rose Avery is a name I remember.
She's one of the best that ever played in
Yeah,
Arkansas. You had Huttig had outstanding programs. Mount Holly, those were schools that didn't play
yeah,
football, and they put a ton of focus on basketball. And
yeah.
you
Hmm.
remember the dual state tournament, of course.
Oh, my favorite tournament of all time. Yeah,
They would mix it up with much bigger schools and always did a great job, you know. So y'all covered a lot of for the folks that don't know, they basically had an entire county that they covered, and that was from small schools that didn't play football up to, and Gordon may not remember this, but at the time, El Dorado was in the largest classification in
right.
Arkansas. We only went to 4A, and El Dorado was in 4A with the likes of
Yeah,
Pine Bluff, who was in the middle of an 80s just tear in
yeah,
football and baseball both.
yeah,
So El Dorado was the flagship city that hosted the newspaper, but they covered Junction City where I went, which was double A. Smackover was single A, Norfolk
right.
single A, and on down and on down. And so any given night on during basketball season, especially, there could be 8 games going on easily in a 50-mile radius or whatever. And then when you throw in Louisiana teams that come up into Arkansas to play, next thing you know, you're covering for not for you, but for people earlier than you. You got Carl Malone coming into town to play
Yep,
ball up there, Benny
yep.
Anders. So a very rich sports tradition. A
Oh
lot
yeah,
of pro athletes and certainly college athletes came from Union County and Union Parish. So it was a lot
yeah.
of fun in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
All right, so you become a sports reporter first, then you take over the desk pretty quick. Who was the editor that left, by the way?
His name was Keith Kropp, Kropp. He wound up taking a job in California.
Okay, and then y'all hired, I know you hired Vance Crony at one
Yeah,
point
yep,
while you were there.
yep.
Did you hire him to be your to was he the first guy you replaced yourself with? How did that go?
Exactly. Yeah, Vance came in. He came in from Texas A&M. He wrote a lot of anti-hog columns that would always stir the readership up. So that was his thing.
Sell newspapers.
Yeah, I
That
guess.
was his thing.
Yeah, he's a lawyer in Oregon now, of all things. And then John Cooper, I hired him uh, after that, uh, and he went on to Oklahoma later on. But yeah,
It's amazing what I remember as a kid because I remember y'all's photographer who took the pictures, Jim Lemon.
yes,
Jim Lemon did a fantastic job covering sport.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I didn't know him that well, but he was at, it seemed like he was, if you turned around, he was there at everything we did, it felt like. And so, you know, and for a long time, I don't know how long he was there, but it seemed like he was there forever.
Oh, he did stay for a long time, and he's still down there. Yeah,
He took some of the best sports shots. I mean, like angles of action you would never expect he'd be, you know, able to get, and he would get them on there. So,
yeah,
all right, so that's a quick trip down memory lane with some
yeah.
names. So, did you assign yourself to cover Junction City baseball and therefore meet Coach Bolin? How did that kind of go down?
You know, that's one of the memories I don't really remember how it came to be. Obviously, they were the top baseball school in the area, and so I don't know if I just decided one day when I first started, go down there and do the, cover them and do the preview story. And I think in doing that, got to know Coach Bolin, and I guess we developed a close enough relationship that I just stuck with it. All those years I was there.
Yeah, for those listening, I'm segueing a little bit into the talk about our coach, Coach Al Bolin. We'll get to more about that later, but he started coaching. He's a graduate of Junction City around 56, somewhere in there, but he started coaching the baseball program around, I think 1967 is what we've decided. That was his, you know how the calendar flips, and you take a job in the fall, then the calendar flips, so the dates don't always
Yeah,
make perfect sense. But I think 67 in the spring might have been his first team, and in 68 they went to the semifinals or finals
yeah,
in baseball. So it
yeah,
didn't take him long to establish a program, and in 1972 they won their first one when Junction City had to compete against everyone because it was an open
right,
division like
yeah,
Indiana basketball. We had open division baseball. So there were teams like Little Rock Catholic, Sylvan
yeah,
Hills, Junction City. Those were kind of early powerhouses when there was actually a beginning of this. I don't know exactly when the state champions were decided and how,
yeah,
but I know Coach Bolin got going quickly with his program. So I know you hung around a lot, so you got to know him
yeah.
really well. So you said 84 was your first shot
84,
at
yeah, right.
covering the team. Well,
No, you're gonna say what I was gonna say. Yeah,
unfortunately they were in a dry spell in
yeah,
84,
exactly.
and he was probably fairly salty. He was probably pretty damn upset about that
Yeah,
because
I think he was.
they I say they, I was too young, but we didn't go to the state, didn't win state. We won it in 80 and in 81. Well, actually 72, 77 was and still is the only undefeated state
Yep.
championship in Arkansas history. And then in 80 and 81. And then in 82, they didn't get it done, but I think they went to the semis. And he was in the middle of a dry spell that 84 and 85 not getting it done at state. So when 86 rolled around, he was not in a good mood about being on a dry spell from the state finals. I can assure you. So can you talk a little bit about learning the man and seeing what he did in practices and how he coached and just anything you can think about the early days of covering the program and Bolin and Hucks and what they had built down there?
Yeah, and it goes back, basically it all went to baseball fundamentals, you know, doing the stealing bases, sacrifice bunt, and suicide squeezes, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later. He was, just the purest in terms of, baseball and the different ways to score a run. He was that way more than any other coach, I knew then, or even, in the next, 15, 20 years that I covered sports at other places. And he had I guess, a philosophy that I guess he developed, on how to handle players, when to be mean, when to be coddling, things like that, and most of the times he did it kind of in a self-deprecating way, to where you couldn't get mad at him, and I think the going into the season in '86, well, I guess, yeah, '86. I came down and to do the season preview story on him, and we had a 5 hour conversation. I saw that in one of the stories you sent me, that we wrote after he passed away, and you know, to talk that long about his thoughts and stuff was just, there's only one other coach where I've experienced that. It was up here in Pensacola, the University of West Florida baseball coach. Whenever I would do a season preview, I would just turn on my tape recorder, ask him one question, and then he'd talk for 30 minutes. So, I didn't have to
Yeah.
do really any work or any reporting. But Coach Bolin was that way. He knew what to say, and he just was a great motivator, as you should well know, having played for him. You just
Hmm.
wanted to win for him, and I think if you didn't, know how to do the right bunt, or catch the signs he gave, then you might be on the bench for a while. So that's the thing. And plus, he had
Yeah.
that Fu Manchu mustache. So,
Yeah.
he was a character, and he had the look of a character. Always wearing that purple Junction City jacket, even if it was 90, 100
Yep.
degrees. he was wearing that. In fact, that reminds me, I found this when I was looking for some stuff. I still have this Junction City hat he gave me.
Oh,
Uh, it is. I mean, the J's still torn and stuff, and
yeah, yeah. I have that style. I still have one too. It has some paint on it from some
yeah,
project I did back then,
yeah,
but that's cool
yeah,
to see the old J, man.
yeah, yes,
Let me jump in and just say that because you said that about the Fu Manchu and the way he dressed, I wrote something and posted it on Facebook or something 20 whatever a long time ago that he looked like some eccentric that had wandered in off the street and just to
yeah,
watch baseball because he
yeah,
looked. I go to high school games now and the coaches wear the uniforms,
right,
like pro coaches. And I know he hated putting that thing on at the state tournament because it was mandatory to put
right,
that on. He coached in what we used to call coaches' shorts, those knit,
yeah,
nylon, knit, whatever
yeah,
they were, coaches' shorts that every coach in the 70s and 80s got issued. And he
yeah,
had that purple unlined windbreaker on, even if it was
yep,
95 degrees, and the Fu Manchu and the hair.
yeah.
And he did not look like a baseball coach.
No, he didn't. Yeah,
And as far as his attitude or like his personality, I've always said he was an interesting mix because we were all scared to death of him as far as not being punished, but not wanting to disappoint him. It was
right.
literally like your own father coaching you. You would run through a wall for him, but you didn't want to upset him. You didn't want to make him mad. But people think when I say that I mean he was a tyrant. He was not a tyrant, not at all.
No, yeah,
He was
you're right.
just as likely to, to give you a pat on the shoulder and smile at you. But any of those little gestures meant anything, meant everything to you. And now he certainly had a temper. He certainly had a temper,
He
but all
did. Yeah,
coaches have tempers, and players are eventually going to find it. And I've
yeah,
got a million stories about that kind of
yeah,
stuff. But you were never. It was never like he's mean or he's a tyrant or
yeah,
he to me. And people go crazy when you compare high school guys with nationally known guys, but he did have that it factor that I see in Nick Saban and Bill Parcells type people. Like
hmm,
nobody wants to cross them discipline wise, but
right.
at the same time, you just love the guy and you will
Yeah,
do anything to please him.
yeah,
And that's an it factor for coaches. And he had that. I don't know what that is, but I've seen that a few times over the years and other men that are on TV. And I go, that's that magic combination of
yeah,
fear and wanting to get a smile out of him and just complete motivation to do things the way he wants. And that's another thing he had in common is things were his way.
yeah. Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't a negotiation.
No.
And that's
Yeah,
but that kind of but it wasn't like a yelling thing. It was just here's
right.
the way we're going to do it.
Yeah,
So anyway, I
and
just want to jump in and say that I can
yeah.
imagine though, as a young guy, he was maybe a little intimidating to you to get to know at first, maybe.
Oh, yeah, yeah. By far, just from the looks, and I think he probably tried to treat me a little bit like his players. Kind of testing me, if that makes sense, to see how I would react and stuff. I don't recall, in the games I covered, we ever said, you got it wrong or anything like that. So of course, they won most of their games anyway, so there wasn't much, controversy on that. But we just, for some reason, seemed to hit it off, and that's rare uh, that happens between like a sports writer and a coach, and technically it's not supposed to happen, but it's human nature, if that makes sense. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know y'all have your ethics you have to go by, and it's a fine line between friendship
Yeah,
but like you said, in some ways, you didn't have a whole lot to be critical about, like, at least what happens, on the field, there was not a whole
right.
lot of, "Why did you leave that pitcher in?" Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I wasn't old enough to question him even. Yeah, I wouldn't have questioned that anyway. So,
I know, but,
yeah. Yeah.
still, that's a high wire act for you guys to
Oh, yeah.
and what's funny is the players, we knew you were, like, one of his favorites,
Oh,
but we
really?
didn't have any
Okay.
expectations. Oh, you could sense it. You could sense that he didn't mind you being around at all,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and maybe it was, hey, any press is great for the program, but
Yeah.
he just seemed to. It was fine that Gordon was around, whether it was practice
Yeah.
or games or sitting on the bus. Or I remember you. I'm pretty sure playing poker with us in Conway in '86,
I think
sitting
so.
around a
Yeah.
table with a bunch of guys in the hotel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
I
mean,
remember
I
that.
know that I know enough about journalism to know that there's still sports writers out there that say things about the way that relationship used to work. And they talk about Bill Parcells telling a
Yeah.
handful of reporters, hey, let's go have a beer after practice. And
Yeah.
then everything he said was by an unnamed source the whole rest of the
Right.
night. But
Yeah.
he would tell them very straightforwardly, you
Yeah.
can use this, you can't use that. And so, um, you got a lot of info out of him because you didn't just cover the games, you covered a lot of the preseason stuff and just kind of updates here and there. Hey, the Dragons are about to enter postseason play. Here's kind of the sketch of
Right.
the season kind of stuff. So he had to sit down with you and give you all that. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
clearly.
Yeah. And I was kind of I've always been a history buff, so I think I went back to, you know, old newspapers that we had in the building, just to get the previous records and results and things like that. So I've always been interested in that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, so did you get a sense of expectations like for the town, the school, the kids playing, and him? Did you kind of was that pretty clear to you that there was kind of a standard there
Oh yeah.
that he
Yeah.
set the tone for?
Exactly. He wasn't the mayor, but he probably was unofficially the mayor of Junction City, and certainly at the school.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's such a weird deal when you grow up down there. Back then, I mean, we've won a ton of state titles in football since then. At the time, though, we hadn't had a lot of success in football, basketball. We were, the joke down there was after dual state, we just quit in basketball, and that's what
yeah,
everybody used to say because that was such a
yeah,
big focus for us. That was our state tournament, but even as being a kid when I started there in the 70s, you just knew that it was expected that we ran a class program and we
right,
won, and that whatever he said went. However that had to happen was according to him. So
yeah,
I would assume for a young sports writer, you figured out pretty quickly that he ran the show.
yeah. I mean, and it goes to tradition. That's everybody's expectation.
Yeah.
You know, Junction City baseball wins, and the coach is the coach, the final say on everything. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, what did you learn like from just talking to him in the preseason and so forth? What did you learn about his views of how baseball ought to be played back because he was a pitcher at Louisiana Tech, so he watched a lot of baseball at a collegiate level. So he
Yeah.
definitely had his opinions on how things should be done. What did you pick up on there?
Well, I think he understood to use the player's talents, that he had, and there he knew where to place them. If that makes sense, like
Yeah,
if he had a good pitcher, he was going to basically ride that pitcher, like in '86 with Keith Dissentel, as much as he
right.
could. But certain
Hmm.
times when you got to bring another pitcher in, or bring in a DH or a pinch hitter. I guess they didn't have DHs back then, did they? I can't remember. Uh,
Yeah, we did. We had
oh,
DH.
did you?
Yeah, we
Okay,
did. We
but
did.
when to bring in a pinch
Yeah,
hitter, he just had that mind that could probably think three batters ahead, if that makes sense, of the batter at the plate. And if the batter got on, what do you do? Do you steal? Do you bunt? Do you wait for the home run? Or the pitcher, when do you take him out? He just seemed to have that innate ability to make the right call, and most of the times it worked, obviously. So that's what I gathered from him, that he was a baseball purist, and smart is all get out in terms of baseball smart.
yeah. I mean, he's kind of all over the board, like you said, based on what he needed at the time. Like I
Yeah,
always thought we were very aggressive because he loves speed, and not
yeah,
all teams are as fast as other teams. And the day that I walked in, that was his whole his selling point to me was you can run, and so we're going to figure out how to deal with that. And it wasn't just me; there were other fast guys, Curtis Robin, Ron
yeah,
Holyfield. They were probably the two that were faster than I was for sure. And he I put it in my my timeline there about 86, but he wasn't afraid to juggle things around either.
Yeah.
If you were slumping, you might not bat till seventh or eighth for a while, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. He wasn't afraid to do things like that for sure. But he definitely believed in he believed in manufacturing runs. I mean,
Right.
we had some really good power hitters. We had a season just out of the blue where we had most of the lineup hitting multiple grand slams in like 87 or 8, I think 87.
Yeah.
And y'all wrote an article about how many grand slams we had hit that year. So he knew that. He knew who could do that, and maybe he didn't need to steal as
Right.
much.
Yeah.
But if we struggled and I got on base, I knew I was stealing. There was no doubt in my mind, or Ron or whoever. So
Yeah.
and and I go to games now, Gordon, and I see these teams struggling to score runs, and I haven't seen anybody attempt a bunt all night. And I'm like,
Yeah.
am I now the old man on the porch griping about kids get off the grass?
Well,
I mean, if you're struggling at the plate, bunt some guys around, man. Do
right.
something.
Yeah. I mean, it's up to the coaches too. They're the ones that got to call the bunt and the
It
steal and the
is.
suicide squeeze and
Well, it feels like now in the age of they just pray for a home run is what it feels
you're right.
like
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah. They're afraid to take risks, and that's what Al Bolin did. He took risks, baseball risk. So yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't afraid to double steal or steal, do a hit and run at the same time, and
Yeah.
then that kind of leads me, just for background for everybody listening. That kind of leads me to his main gig, which was he loved the old suicide squeeze bunt, which I
Yeah.
rarely see in games. Rarely see it in games anymore.
Right.
In fact, there was a couple of years ago, the Razorbacks had a really good team, and they were just getting destroyed at home in the Super Regional by somebody. Can't remember who it was now. They weren't supposed to beat them, and they're just bunting and small balling Arkansas to death in that game. And Arkansas was making errors, throwing the ball all over the place,
Yeah.
and all this other team was doing was stealing strategically and bunting guys around. And my son and I were watching it, and he's like, "I don't understand what's going on." And I said, "That's how I grew up learning to play baseball." I said,
Yeah.
"That's 80s style right there." And
Yeah.
they Arkansas just fell apart. So
Yeah.
he knew that. I think the way I would describe it is he liked to put pressure on teams.
Yeah. You had to think, and that if you're thinking too much out there in the field, you might make a mistake. Yeah, and that's a lot of times it happened. Yeah.
But do you remember his suicide squeeze
Oh yeah.
bunt philosophy? I mean, did that come? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember specific comments to me about it. I wish I had more of that background, but I knew he loved it, and I saw it often happen, and it's just kind of
Yeah.
it's one of those rare things that you don't see very often, and when it happens, when it's successful, the crowd goes wild, your team gets pumped, and that can help in the next few innings just to continue the momentum. So
I found an article where he had our cleanup hitter execute a suicide in a tight game late in the game.
yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I said that sounds just like him, because
Yeah.
whoever we were playing was probably stunned by that.
Oh yeah. The infielders are probably back on the back of the infield dirt, probably just looking for a deep ball. Yeah. So
People think I'm lying, but I tell them that I don't remember the first, I'm going to say 3 or 4 days of practice. I don't remember picking up a bat at all. And then when we did, I remember multiple trips through the cage where you didn't get to swing it. You just had to bunt. And he wanted 1 through 9, actually 1 through 12 or 15, being able
yeah.
to bunt at all times. It didn't matter. He wanted to be comfortable with everybody being able to bunt the ball into play. So
Yeah.
I always thought that was interesting, because I feel like it's an afterthought now, but that was what we
Oh yeah.
started. That was our foundation.
Exactly. The baseball fundamentals. Yeah. Yeah. Speed, bunting. Yeah.
He loves speed, and and I'm not going to say I had green light to steal, but he was fun to play for, because he wanted to be aggressive, and in baseball, that's how you show aggression. You get out there and annoy the pitcher. That's one way you
Yeah.
do it.
Exactly.
So in 84 and 85, you're there for a couple of years. You've gotten to know the guy. You gotten to know the tradition. You've got to know what we sort of expect, but you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we come into do you remember coming into 86 his any of his health problems that were going on at the time?
Yeah, I remember, he talked about it a little bit. He said those, excuse me, dang doctors, and he didn't use the word dang.
Yeah, right.
Made me put on this EKG and stuff and wear it for a while.
Yeah. Back then it was like the
Yeah.
size of a
Yeah.
typewriter, it felt like hanging around your neck, you know? It's not like those little tiny ones they have now, and he would
Right.
show up to practice in that thing and
Uh,
went on about his business.
I can't remember the exact. I don't know if he was still wearing it, or I think he had stopped wearing it, didn't he? At some point later in the season.
Yeah, he had given them all the data they were looking for by then, and what I looking back, what we know now is I'm assuming he gave it back to them, and that's when they said, "You need to come through here, come back to Little Rock and get
Yeah.
this surgery."
Yeah, and knowing him with the baseball love, that he didn't want to do it until the season was over. I wonder, if y'all had been a 500 team, would he have left before the end of the season to go ahead and get it taken care of? That's an interesting thing to consider. Probably not.
No, I don't know. I doubt it. And that kind of brings me to this real quickly before we move on. Coach Hucks, Dale Hucks, his
Yeah.
right hand man, he put us through our paces a
Okay.
lot that year. I mean, Coach Bolin didn't miss any games, but he did miss some
Yeah. Right.
practices having to go. A doctor in Little Rock's not going to see you on a Saturday, so he did miss some practice having to heading back from an appointment or whatever. So
Yeah.
Hucks did step in a lot that year,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's worth mentioning, especially since he went on, later to be our head coach. But yeah, they definitely had their 2-man act. They were really good
I
at.
could tell, Coach Bill and trusted Coach Hucks, to take over and do the same thing, make the right calls, and complete trust is what I saw in that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So 86, he's got the heart monitor on, and you know, I'm gonna kind of jump into what was going on that year. We rolled through about 10 games with no losses, and then we played Smackover in Junction City, and they beat us 10-8.
Yeah.
I did not know that that was the first time Smackover had ever beaten Junction City. I
Yeah.
had no idea.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us had any idea. No, I mean, they've probably been playing since the '50s. I mean, that's the first time, really?
Yeah.
So, I do remember that he was so mad. Well, he was disappointed and mad, but, that
Yeah.
game was out of hand at one point, and late in the game, JJ Hill, who was my fellow freshman, he's no longer with us, by the way, JJ. JJ hit a grand slam
Yeah.
late in the game and made it 10-8 instead of 10-4. So we had a little bit of a comeback, and then we still fell short. Where after the game, and I've heard other players from other teams tell me that this used to freak them out. That we would sometimes get chewed out or have to run or something after a win, and that would blow their minds as they were leaving and had lost. That we were we,
Yeah.
we were being punished in some way. Well, that night he lined us up, and I mean, parents. This was a
Yeah.
night game. It was definitely dark and the lights were on. It's probably 6 p.m. start or something. Probably a Friday night. He liked those night games for some reason, and he lined us up and he said, "We just made history in the wrong damn way." And he said, "All I could think about was how much I was going to run y'all in front
Mhm.
of your mom and daddy when this game was over until JJ hit that
Yeah.
grand slam. Y'all showed me a little bit of heart loading those bases and JJ bailing
Yeah.
y'all out, or y'all would be running for a while." And we didn't want to lose, obviously,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I'd
Yeah.
seen him like. Not that we had lost a game, we had upset the tradition somehow. You know what I mean? Like that was a
Yeah.
monumental loss for
Yeah.
whatever. Smackover was good. They weren't a chump by any stretch. They had great athletes.
Yeah.
But So that did not make him happy making that negative historical mark that night, I can tell you. And we were thankful JJ hit that grand slam,
Yeah,
believe me.
I saw the article, but
Okay, so I didn't know if you remembered that, but that's what happened. Well, you can imagine why it made an impression on me because he was so upset. Back then, Arkansas was organized differently, especially in the lower divisions, and we had a by district, a district, then a regional, and then state. And I don't know how, but Junction City hosted by district, district, and regional that year. I mean, I don't know what the process was, but we ended up with all of them. I know that leading into the by district, he told us, I do not plan to get this field ready for other teams other than us. And, that's a good way to put it, I thought. So we rolled through those. And the reason the regional used to exist apparently is it would shorten the state tournament. It was really the play-ins for the state tournament, if you want to put it in NCAA terms. And so it was a two round thing or something that we had, and we really breezed through most of that, and that brought us to earning the bid to the state tournament. And back then, seems like they locked in on locations and kept them for a while because we did the UCA in Conway trip every year I was in school. That's where we played, and they had years before had been in Russellville and Fayetteville and all these different places, but we went to Conway, and that's where I'm assuming you packed a bag and went with us to stay until we lost, right?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. So thankfully, the paper paid for it. I hope.
That's why you
Yeah,
were playing poker. You were trying to win some cash
yeah.
to
Trying to get
spend,
some
right?
money for gas to go back home.
You don't mean El Dorado News Times wasn't putting you up in the best accommodations possible and bankrolling you big time for that?
No, no. That's they didn't have that kind of cash, though.
We we used to joke because our per diem, we thought we were big shots. Our per diem was $10 a day to eat 3 meals out of, and in '86 you could do that really
Oh
easily.
yeah, yeah. You could. Yeah, I probably had less per diem from the paper to do that. So
The JC guys, we were rocking that early NIL money, man. We knew what we were
yeah,
doing.
that's right.
Okay, so all right, so we went up there expecting to play a 3 round tournament Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So this gets to the hard part. So what
Yep.
I forgot when I put the timeline together was that the Monday got rained out.
Right.
It
Yeah, I forgot that too. Yeah. Yeah.
I did not remember that at all. And let me back up for just a minute. I want to shout out all the teammates. And some of the things going into that you pointed out in your article. That was our 16th state tournament in 18 years. We had hit 25 home runs up to that point as a team. We had somebody on the roster, I guess, the last time they had played in state, but they didn't play. So
Okay.
Disatel's
Yeah.
group was old enough to have been there, but they didn't
Yeah.
play. None of them
Okay.
played in it. Disatel was 13-1 on the season, taking that loss against Smackover.
Smack over it.
Mike Story was his Yeah, Mike Story was his backup, who was a junior. He was undefeated at 7-0, and Mark Price was a hard. Mike Story was the junk ball thrower who threw much harder than people realized, but he also threw a ton of junk. And
Yeah.
Mark Price threw gas. He was a hard throwing sophomore. So that's kind of how we got there. And the other note that I forgot or that I find interesting is that the game scheduled for Monday was against Highland, and Highland had been a thorn in Coach Bolin and the program's side lately.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that till I looked all this up. That Junction had beat them in '81, the second of their back-to-back titles. Highland had been the foe in '81, but then Highland knocked JC out of the state tournament in '82 and '83. And then in
Yeah.
'84 and '85, Junction didn't even go to the state tournament. So that's why he was a little bit ornery about things leading into '86.
Yeah. Hey, and if I can just back up a minute when we're talking about, yeah, his strategy as a coach. If when you just read off the pitchers, Disatel was a senior, Story was a junior, Price was a sophomore. I think that was another attribute of Coach Bolin, that he would identify a pitcher in each class. So each year he had a senior that was spot on. I think that also helped to the success. Having that chain of succession, if you will. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, and he knew, and I've been debating this lately. I talked to, I'll tell you later a little bit about it. It's not worth it on the recording, but I talked to another high school pitcher from our area just last week about something. And he was a Louisiana guy. He could not remember what, if any, were the rules around pitching, and I didn't know either. I know Kelly Owens pitched both parts of a doubleheader in the early
Yeah.
80s. There's no way there were any rules then against how many
No.
innings you could throw.
Yeah.
So in 86, I don't know if there were any rules about regular season versus the tournament. I have no idea
Yeah.
what the long-term plan would be to have, maybe a junior in your pocket ready, because the way it's laid out, you had to win 3 days in a row
Right.
to
Yeah.
get a state title.
Yeah.
So that would be my assumption, would be that Disdale can't do it all. So Story and Price, we're going to need them at some point. And
Yeah.
that's why you
Yeah.
played them earlier in the year.
Exactly. Get him ready. Yeah. Yeah.
I think you're exactly right, because the temptation would be to just throw Disdale at everybody. But, we played twice a week. We played 30 plus
Yeah.
games a year. So, or usually around that 30
Yeah.
mark. So you can't pitch every game. So I'm like you. I thought it was smart that he always had a couple of other guys that could get you by,
Yeah.
and the long-term plan being, of course, that middle game of a state tournament, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do know that he talked to us about Highland. He wanted to beat them badly because they had dealt with them so much in the early 80s, and had been knocked out by them a couple of times in a row. So he had it for Highland. He was ready to beat them. And so then we get to, so Monday it rained, and so all this moves to Tuesday. So we're looking at now a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday 3-round tournament. Of course, what we knew at the time before we ever stepped on the field Tuesday was that graduation was Thursday night.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so in the back of our minds, we knew we weren't going to play Thursday no matter what happened, most likely. I mean, you just,
Yeah.
as you're a teenager, you can see these things. They're not moving graduation.
Right.
Historically, though, they have made accommodations historically in state tournaments. So didn't plan on playing Thursday. So according to your article, which are where my notes come from, in the bottom of the fifth, we were leading Highland 6-3. And Coach Bolin, that's when he collapsed while in the third base coach's box. The hard part about that is we were in the third base dugout. And I don't
Right.
know, where
Yeah.
were you
Right
sitting?
behind
Were
him.
you in the dugout?
I was up in the press box. I had a direct view of the whole
Okay.
field. Yeah. One thing about this, what we're talking about, this to this day remains my most vivid and emotional memory of my sports writing career, is what happened,
Yeah.
that day and then the next few days on. Yeah.
Well, I figured that's why I called you, because, I
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
you had a unique perspective. I mean, I don't talk about it much. I mean, I was 14 years old and sitting,
Right.
20 feet away. And this isn't about me. This is about me and my teammates. We had guys
Right.
from 14 to 18 years old. And at that time in life, I had 4 grandparents still alive and 2 parents. I hadn't lost anybody,
Right.
in my life that I was that close to. And there was a lot of us in that boat. And not to mention, his wife was scorekeeping in the dugout, and his 2 sons were
Yeah.
in the dugout. Roy
Right.
was a junior, and Sam was the 8th grader, but he was the bat boy. And I grew up
Yeah.
with those 2. 20 feet away, 30 feet away
Yeah.
is where this all happened. He went to a knee. He went to a knee and then
Yep.
down.
Yeah. And what I remember on that, when I saw him collapse, people start, kind of the shock and the kind of the oh my gosh type thing. And then I look to my left and I see 3 people who are in the stands, and they start slowly walking, behind your dugout, and they came out to start administering CPR. And it was just the memory of them slowly walking, which is you're supposed to do, because I've had some CPR training. You're not supposed to run as fast as you can. Just do it calmly. and start applying CPR. And then obviously somebody called, the ambulance. And this is one of my more vivid memories. The ambulance comes up, behind the stands on the third base side. They they park the ambulance right behind the grandstands, and one of the parents, and I think it was Curtis Robbins' dad, I can't remember.
It was.
He ran to the ambulance while the EMTs are still getting their stuff out of the back. He starts driving the ambulance closer to the entrance to the field. And I think they wound up arresting him or at least cuffing him later on. And that's just one of the memories from that going on. And then, you know, and of course, they put him on the stretcher and take him out. But, from that experience, that, incident there on the field, that's the memories I remember very vividly of the CPR.
You're dead on,
The
because the three people who went to help were my mom and Curtis Robbins' mom and Curtis Robbins.
Yeah.
It was, my mom was a nurse, Curtis Robbins' mom
Okay.
was a nurse, and Curtis Robbins'
Yeah.
father, Henry, was a fireman slash EMT paramedic.
Okay. All right.
They all went around there, and I do remember Henry Robbins, Curtis's dad, Henry, our leadoff hitter's father, getting
Right.
upset that they didn't bring the ambulance any closer. So he just jumped in and
Right.
drove it to right to the gate going into the third base side of the
Exactly.
field.
Yeah.
And they detained him. The cops, when they got there, they
Yeah.
detained him and I don't think he got arrested, but he got detained. That,
No.
like, they were not
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
Well,
was a slow response to most people's. I mean, or I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know if slow is the word. I don't even know if the ambulance crew was actually at the game or they had to come from the hospital. But you could see the hospital over the left field fence. It was only 2 blocks over.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably where my inexperience as a sports writer, I never did follow up to find out who the people were that came to administer CPR. And this is the first time I've heard it was your mom. Your mom was one of them. So that's yeah. I should have checked on it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that was. I guess those were the three medical people in the crowd at the moment, and
Yeah.
that's just what they did. But
Yeah. Hmm.
so yeah, so he collapsed, and all the chaos that ensued of getting him taken care of and out of there. And we
Right.
didn't know. We had no idea what was going on. They just very quietly put us in the bus and took us back to the hotel across town,
Right.
right off the first or Oak Street exit in Conway is where we were
Yeah.
staying.
Hmm.
Right there under the bridge on 40.
Yeah.
So, kind of where my memory blurs is what all happened when we actually got in there. But I know that Hux was obviously on the phone and people started showing up. I don't know
Yeah.
where you went. Did you go back to the hotel with us?
Actually, I think I went to the hospital. I have vague
Okay.
memories of going there just to, you know, confirm, I guess. And I can't
Yeah.
remember if Coach Hucks had gone there as well, or if he came. He probably came stay with you guys. I would think that would make the most sense. Uh, but then I think after the hotel.
In a way, he's all we had. I mean, I think,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. And he might have gone to the hospital, but he ended up with us all in one room.
yeah.
Um, that was the weird part, was finding out he was gone, and then what do we do next? Because,
Right,
even this many years later, you think, what would anybody do in that situation,
right. Yeah, because I wound up. I know I wrote basically a game story. What went on until the fifth inning. I also did kind of like a story that ran, I think, on the front page of the News Times, just on him passing. And then the Arkansas
Right.
Gazette, who owned the El Dorado News Times, they had me do a story for their paper as well the next day. So I that day I also wrote three stories. So basically, I think
Yeah.
when I left the hotel, I went back or left the hospital, I went back to the hotel and just started writing.
Yeah, and they got on the phone to people to go tell his parents, who were elderly and still alive, and they're in
Oh,
JC,
that's
and
right. Yeah.
school officials, our principal and superintendent, everybody got in the car. Well, not our superintendent, because that was his father, but our principal at the time, Mr. Muse, he got in the car, headed
Yeah.
that way. Terry Crumpler was our football coach. He wasn't up there, I don't think, but he jumped in the car
Yeah.
and headed that way to help Hucks. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
small town, that's what you expect. The collective came
Yeah.
together and did what they had to
Right.
do, you know. I remember Hucks telling us he was gone and a team player only meeting thing at the hotel. And I remember him saying, we don't know what we're going to do next. And then kind of having to walk out and leave us with our thoughts for a minute and go make some more phone call. You know, no cell phone.
Yeah.
So he had to go to a room and call
Right.
people. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So we kind of had to sit there and think to ourselves, is this over? Is it? Is this, you're grieving, you feel
Yep.
responsibility for finishing the task. It all kind of runs together, and you're 14 to 18 years old in the middle of all that.
Oh yeah.
Well, in
Yeah.
hell, you're 22, you're 23 years old or
Yeah. Yeah.
24 years old.
Yeah. Exactly.
You had to
Yeah.
be thinking, what in the absolute hell is going on? I can't believe this, right?
Yeah, and I was kind of like by myself. I didn't have any, at the time mentors or, anybody to tell me, what do you do? I don't know if my instinct kicked in just to start writing because that's what I know how to do. I do remember asking Coach Hucks. I can't remember if it was that day or maybe the next day before y'all resumed the game. I said, was there anything about Coach Bolin that you noticed that might have been in an indicator that he was about to have a heart attack? He said the only thing he said at breakfast was the sausage had some extra sage in it. And I think somewhere I put a quote in that in the story. I can't remember if I did or not, but I remember his Hux's quote about the sage and
On our end, I think we took a vote. I think it was, bless you. I think it was just that easy. We took a vote. And, your kids, you wanna play. No one wanted to
right,
shut it down and go home, but
yeah,
what Hux was so good at, he was clearly the adult in the room, and he'd been in the military, he'd been coaching for decades and
yeah,
teaching, and he said, "Look, here's how it would probably lay out if we choose to play." And he gave us a very brief sketch of what the next few days might hold, but plans had not been made. We didn't know. He just was working off of,
yeah,
here's probably what's going to happen. And I don't know if it was that year later on when some of the post everything articles were coming out, but I remember him quoting, and it might have been with you, being quoted as saying, "I wasn't worried about what would happen if we continued and won. I was really worried about what would happen if we continued and
right,
lost."
yeah,
And that's really stuck with me over the years because, kids run on emotion, and
oh
we
yeah,
were all
hmm,
fired up. But man, that was going to be a hammer to the face if the next day, we didn't take care of business or whatever.
right, yeah, yeah. I think it would have been kind of different, like if it had happened to a player. That might have been a different situation. Where do you continue or something like that? And I've seen that. I've heard about it, over the years where a player collapsed and the team didn't continue on. But the way Coach Bolin was, it seemed like everybody in Junction City and all the players knew we got to finish for him. So it was almost like there wasn't any other choice. If that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. And you know what's crazy is I remembered this preparing for this. Highland had lost a coach on the football field not long before that. I don't know
Oh wow.
how many years before, but those guys that were there on the
Yeah.
field, they were familiar with their football coach passing away during a game also. And
Yeah.
they were very, very nice and sympathetic and all the things, circled up and prayed and just,
Yeah. Hmm.
just couldn't ask to be out there with a better group of guys than how they ended up treating us.
Yeah.
So that night or whatever, at some point that day, the plan developed, and with our vote to continue, Hooks came in and laid it all out. So he said, "Here's the only way we're going to be able to continue. Will be the following: tomorrow, we will pick right back up where we were, and we'll play and finish that game. If we win, we will sit for one game, and then we will play another game, which would have been Wednesday." And he
Right.
said, "And if we win, we will go home and we will bury coach Thursday morning, and we'll come back up here after graduation Thursday night, and we will play Friday." And that was obviously it's unsaid but well known that if you lose any of those, you're done. But that was the
Right.
way he laid it out all the way through, winning it, what that would look like. And so I don't know if that's confidence, or I know he walked a lot of laps around that parking lot that week,
I bet
before,
he did.
during, and
Yeah.
after all this. Yeah, he had a lot.
Yeah.
He had a lot on his mind, and he was holding it all together. But so that's what we did. We got up the next day. The moms took the uniforms off and washed them. How small town is that, And
Yeah.
the the next day we huddled again as a team in the hotel, and I'll never forget this. Hux said, "All right, guys, we're going back out there. Same pitch count, same everything, right where we were." And he said, "That means Duck." We called him Duck. His name was Richard Williamson, our catcher. He was a junior. He said, "Duck, you're going to be back at the plate." And he said, "The best thing you could do for everybody in this room is hit the first good pitch right up the middle and knock that pitcher right off of that mound." Except he didn't say it that nicely. He said it more colorful.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, that is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, the second pitch, he hit it right up the middle. And from where we were sitting, it literally looked like he was going to hit the pitcher. Just a line shot
Yeah.
right back at the pitcher. And I mean, that's just, you couldn't write that in Hollywood and anyone believed it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So we won that. We did hang. Actually, we already had a lead, so we hung on,
Yeah.
and our boy Disatel had 13 Ks in that game. We won 11-3.
That probably helped with the pain. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it settled, calm nerves, kind
Yeah.
of get you back task focused. So I guess playing was really truly the best thing for everybody. I mean, that's the way I look
Yeah.
at it all these years later.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
So we beat them. We get a little break. I guess there's another game we have to sit through, and then we played the next game against Clarksville. I made note of that game took 90 minutes or so, and so
Yep.
here we are back to the strategy. All right, you got to have a number two, and Disatel just pitched 7 innings over 2 days, and so here
Yep.
comes Mike Story, our junior junk ball specialist, who had a deceptive fastball to go with it. And he got up there and he took care of business. And it looks like Disatel finished the game in the seventh.
Yeah.
So we dispatched to them. And I thought it was interesting that you made a note that Scott Davis, who was one of our power hitters, probably batted fifth, maybe sixth, I can't remember. Scott Davis squeeze bunted in a run in the third, which you noted was certainly Boland's trademark move in a tight game. Scott had probably hit 5 or 6 home runs that year, and he squeezed bunts.
Yeah. Well, like you said, everybody knew how to bunt. So yeah.
You dang well better know how to bunt. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So looking back, Wednesday's a long day. We get it all done, and then we're kind of left with our thoughts all the way back to Union County because we went home
Right.
on Wednesday night. And
Right.
so I'm sure you're writing like crazy because now you know what the next 2 days are going to hold, Thursday and
Oh yeah.
Friday, and so you're trying to catch up the readers. So you had a lot going on too.
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of a covering a sports story, and then the human story. For the funeral and how the players were handling it, and interviewing some of his former players and stuff. Kind of a tribute story, if you will, type thing, just to kind of relive his thing. And I, from the stories you sent me, I did a column or two, just my own personal thoughts as well on that. So yeah.
That's right, because I mean, you were clearly fond of each other, so none of this was easy on you. But kind of like the players and the school administrators, you had a job to do as well. You were a one man crew up
Yep.
there, so you had to cover this. But then you had your
Yeah.
personal things you had to work through as well.
Right. Yeah.
And you did a great job with all those articles, kind of setting up what was going to happen over the rest of the week, and sort of looking back at his career and all that. It was great.
Yeah.
So that left, like I said earlier, that left a trip home on Wednesday night, and then we had a Thursday that was pretty full of events. So we went to the funeral that morning. Phil Robertson, the commander himself, was Boland's buddy, and he actually preached at the funeral.
I did not know that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, did you know they were friends at the time at all, or you just didn't know he was at the
Well,
funeral? Or
I probably knew they were friends, but I didn't know Phil's, his notoriety or his famous and stuff like that. So, if I did, it's already gone, from my mind type thing. Uh, I'll have to go back and look
yeah,
at
and this was obviously before the
right, the series. Yeah.
it was before the national exposure, but Phil was he was a businessman at that point selling duck calls,
Yeah.
but they were buddies.
Yeah.
And Phil had turned things around and he was preaching at the funeral. So I always remembered that, and I remembered they had a row of pews up front reserved for us, with the family or whatever, like you do at funerals. So we met. I don't know how that day or where. We probably went over to the field briefly or something, but maybe he might have commandeered the church after the funeral. I don't know, but
Yeah.
and he gave us a typical Huck speech, and get some sleep, take a nap if you can, get your uniforms washed, pack your bag. And he literally said, we had two seniors, Patrick Hill and Keith Dissatel,
Right.
our designated hitter and our senior pitcher. He said, bring a bag and your uniform, throw them on the bus. It'll literally be at the front of the gym. And he wasn't lying about that. It was right at the front door of the gym. And come in and watch your teammates graduate. And then the funny part was, and only Hooks could say it, something to the effect of, when graduation's over, you better kiss your girlfriend and hug your mama because we're getting on that bus and leave.
Yeah. That's right.
And I felt so bad. I felt so bad for our seniors, man. They didn't get to party at all that night. They had to get on a
Right.
bus,
Yeah.
you know, and ride to Conway.
Well, it was so appropriate too, and I mentioned that I think in that column I wrote for the next day that he was buried in the cemetery as close to the baseball field as you could be. That was just a kind of the perfect setting.
It's so crazy too, because at some point, talking to us about all of this, Hooks, he told us it was the strangest thing. We were sitting in the bleachers so we could see the cemetery. He had us all huddled in the bleachers and he said, I want you to turn around and look. And we looked over our shoulders and there was the fresh dirt from the funeral earlier.
Yeah.
And he said, I want you to know that I've already bought my marker. I know where I'm going to be buried. And he pointed in some general direction out there. And he said, so for the rest of your lives, you guys are going to go around that curve to me, and I'm going to send you over to bowling on at third over there for the rest of your lives.
There you go. That's perfect.
Going left to right, I mean, right to
Yeah.
left, you go by Hooks
Right.
and then by bowling. And I always thought that was typical Hooks to say something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, and the few times when I've come home to Arkansas to visit, a few times I've come up through El Dorado and 167, and every time that I've done that, when I pass the baseball field, I'll look to the cemetery too, and you can't see it from the highway, but I said there's Coach
Yeah.
Bolin. I always think about that.
It was funny that he wanted to be buried so close to the field. He's still closer than anyone to the field.
Yeah, I don't. It'd be interesting to know. I guess he had already had that spot reserved, or if they just decided it was open, let's put him there at a thing though.
I don't know. That's a great question, Gordon. I don't know if that
Yeah,
was pre-planned or they thought that up that week. That's a really good question.
yeah, and it reminds me of one other story. I think I was here in Pensacola early in my career here, uh, covering a football game, and I remember. I think it was like an assistant coach collapsed on the sideline during like a football game or something. And while he didn't die, the memories of what happened with Coach Al just flooded back in. Just it was really surreal, to remember that just from seeing that guy. That they didn't call the game or anything like that to that dramatic with y'all, but yeah, it that's how much that memory of that day and that week is still etched in my mind.
Well, yeah, it's a traumatic event any way you cut it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like I said,
Hmm.
you were pretty young yourself, so it was,
Yeah.
traumatic for all of us.
Yeah. And this is a side story too. My dad graduated. It was Arkansas State Teachers College then in the 50s before it became UCA.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after he passed I found some old articles. He was on the student paper. I knew that mainly as the main editor and business manager. It turns out he also wrote sports stories, and I never knew that until after he
Oh,
died.
wow.
And I hate not finding that out just to ask him about it. So I've got articles of him, from the college newspaper of him covering some basketball games and track things like that.
Okay. So that gets us to Thursday or Friday, the
Right.
rescheduled finals, and we're playing a school named Lavaca. And Lavaca had a pitcher that I jokingly say they had a ringer because they brought this kid in from Kansas City or somewhere. He came in for 1 year, from what I remember. And I'm
Wow.
not whining about it. I'm just telling you what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Just telling people what happened. I'm pretty sure the Democrat, or it wasn't you, it was a state newspaper, made sure it may have been was there a paper out of Fort Smith back then? Maybe Fayetteville
Well, I'm
wrote it.
sure there was. Yeah. Yeah, there was.
There was an article that said this guy, his name is Steve Jeffcoat, and I hope he hears this. He came in for 1 year and he was a stud. I mean, he was a perfect complement to Keith Dissatel. They were the same guy. Hard throwing guys, great pitchers. I mean, the main thing about that game is that Lavaca had never been there. They didn't even have a baseball field. They practiced on their
Wow.
football field. They had this kid come in that threw like he did, and we had Dissatel, and Dissatel was well rested. There's no excuses, and he'll tell
Sure.
you that
Yeah.
he was well rested. And so that thing went into extra innings, and neither team could really scratch a run across. And finally, let's see, the sequence was we got to the ninth inning. And this was a night game, so I'm sure by then it's
Yep.
9 o'clock at night in Conway, Arkansas. In the top of the ninth, their eighth batter in the lineup opened the inning with a double, and then Dissatel walked the next guy, which was only his third walk of the game. The next batter bunted back to moving runners around. They pulled off a sacrifice bunt, moved them around, and that left runners on second and third, one out, and I'm standing in right field at 14 years old. And because when Dissatel pitched, I played right field. When he didn't pitch, I picked splinters.
Right.
And
Yeah.
because I couldn't hit. Patrick Hill could hit, but I couldn't hit. So we combined to make a pretty decent right fielder, me and Pat. So I'm out there, and that means that it was the let's see, if the eighth batter, he walked the ninth batter. The next batter was the leadoff man who sack bunted, and so that mean their number two guy, um, Michael Arredondo, came to the plate and he hit
Yeah.
a fly ball. And so you said in your article that you noted that the throw took only one hop, but the guy got under the tag. And my note was Junction City fans lost their minds over that
Yeah.
call.
Yeah.
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 Uh, our catcher was Richard Williamson, the one who hit the first hit of the pick back up game against Highland, and his dad told me for the next 30 years when he saw me that you threw that guy out. You know that, right?
Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. I remember the throw.
I don't know how close it was. It looked good from where I was standing, but I'm in right
Yeah.
field. So
Yeah.
what's
And
funny is our guy that videoed was my best friend's father, David Kaufman, who played years before. His dad was still videoing games for Coach Bolin, and he videoed that, and he got so excited with the throw and the play at the plate, he swung the camera too wide and missed it.
oh no, you don't have any video replay.
No, no, he's framed up on the play, but then I guess
Yeah.
he kind of wants to turn and track the ball, and then he swings wide of the tag. So we don't have it on
Ouch.
video. I have the video.
Yeah.
I have the game on video. It's on YouTube. I don't have
Oh
the
wow.
actual tag though, so we don't
Yeah.
really know. All I have is Duck Williamson telling me he tagged him out. So
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
close play, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
Okay, so that means in the top of the ninth, they went up 1-0, and we did. We got a runner at least to second base, but the Jeff Coat guy was so strong, and he ended up getting a strikeout to end the game.
Yeah.
He only gave up 3 hits for that game. Dissatel only gave up
Right.
7. Dissatel had 11 strikeouts, and Jeff Coat had 15. So that's where it ended. 1-0 in the ninth in 9 innings. In Conway, Arkansas, with a 26-2 record. The last loss had been that thing 10 games into the season against Smackover. So 28 games for that season. So yeah, that's how 86 happened for you
Yeah.
and for me and for whole town and high school and a couple of high schools and all that.
Yeah, I remember that game. It's weird. I don't remember the game against Clarksville at all. Till I read the game
I don't
story you
either.
sent me.
I don't either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But I do remember against Lavaca just how much pressure there was every single inning, and it just kept increasing. As the game got into the fifth, sixth, and seventh inning, which is 7 innings is the normal games for high school, and nobody was scoring, and then to go to the eighth and the ninth, it's almost like it was ordained to have that type of finish to finish off that week of unexpected sadness and you know tears and then baseball all put in together. And probably I keep wondering, since the last few weeks we talked about doing this podcast, if it would have been better if y'all had got blown out, or if it was better that y'all lost 1-0 in ninth inning, because I'm sure the emotions at the end of that game were so incredible, just because you lost, but 9 innings, you're feeling that pressure, and all of a sudden it's released. Uh, I don't remember the post game at all. Of course, I was worried trying to get quotes or something like that, and the deadline. If it was a late game at 9 o'clock, then I had to get on the phone pretty
You've got logistic issues back then with no cell phones and
quick.
laptops and
No,
stuff. I do know
yeah,
that you're accurate. It was like a pin popping a balloon. I think it ended the way it should have. Honest, not
yeah,
win or loss, but to be that
right,
close to for one
yeah,
one team or the other to win 1-0 in 9 innings feels appropriate because it was a great baseball game. I mean, it's not like people were booting the ball all over the field. Um, it
yeah,
was two strong right-handed pitchers that were seniors up there doing their thing, and something had to give somewhere. And I know you're
yeah,
going to think I'm lying, and I've never said this very much or anything, and probably think I'm kidding, but I was 14 standing out there as a true freshman, and I remember thinking he's going to hit this damn ball to me, and I swear to you,
yeah,
I don't know if that's an Al Bolin thing where it's kind of like expect to make the play always kind of pep talk, you know, want to make the play. But I sat there. I mean, I stood there and I thought to myself over and over, this ball's coming to me. This ball is coming to
yeah,
me. I mean, it's just like wasn't surprised at all when it did because that's what I
yeah,
expected to happen. Which is just nuts, really.
yeah. And that may have been another reason why Coach Bowden liked night games. So y'all were ready, for postseason play. If the game goes tonight, that y'all could handle it, could see the ball in the air, and do it that way. So
You're right. We played a lot of night games.
yeah, yeah. I've covered a high school softball game that went 22 innings. I've covered a girls basketball game that went 5 overtimes, but the 1-0
Woo-hoo.
9 inning game is probably the top of those three as far as drama. Of course, they didn't have anybody passing away in those other situations, so that kind of added to
Right.
the aura of this whole experience. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you. I just think it was I think it was appropriate to be a close, hard fought, cleanly played game. No, not a bunch of errors and all those kinds of things. It would have been hard to take to get blown out. That would have sucked.
yeah, that's true.
It
Yeah,
sucks bad enough. And I think the reason it's okay, it's because no one was ever going to fault us for losing any of those games.
right.
Really, you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. Yeah, because if it had been a blowout, people said, "Well, they were just too emotionally drained, from the loss of the coach."
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
fact that it was 109 innings,
We let the way it happened is baseball decided it the way baseball
yep,
decides it. It wasn't any other factors, which is,
right,
pretty
yeah,
cool. Pretty cool, really.
yeah,
Um, so that kind of ends that season, and obviously we all kind of went away and had our thoughts for the next year and so forth. It was really a 4-year journey for, I know as freshmen there were, I don't know, we had 5, 6, 7 freshmen on the team. I know we all were like, okay, this can't be how we go out. We got 3 more years to get this right. And luckily we did when we were seniors. We
Yeah.
won it in '89. That was Hux's first state title.
Yeah.
Um, so it was kind of a bookend 4-year career, if you will, for me, with this crazy thing happening the first go
Right.
around and then ending it with coming really close. We went to the semis the next year,
Yeah.
and got beat by somebody. And the next year we didn't go at all. That's a long story. But then senior year we took care of business,
Yeah.
and it was a. And what's crazy about that? Um, we won that on Wednesday night, and we had to graduate the next day, and we didn't get home till 2 or 3 in the morning, and we had to
Yeah.
be at graduation. We had to be at graduation walking practice at 8 a.m.
Ooh.
And
Ouch.
we Hey, I was the happiest dude ever to not have any sleep, though. We gladly showed up
Yeah.
for that, complete
Sure.
wrecks,
Yeah.
because we were. But I know you've been away for a while, and I'm sure you've kind of kept up here and there. But just so you know, Coach Bolin ended up winning 4 titles in '72,
Yeah.
'77, '80, and '81. Coach Hucks won ours in '89, and then he won again in
Yep.
1992. And then Bill Kennedy came along and won in '04. And then Joe Paul Hammond, who's one of the best players we've ever put out of the Junction City program. He was in the Vince Holyfield, Perry Franklin, Kelly
Yep.
Owens days. There was also Joe Hammond, kind of a cornerstone of our whole program as a player and later a coach. He won 2 for himself
Yep.
later on. And so that's 9 state titles since 1972. And the only school in Arkansas with more is Pine Bluff. They have 10.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's the 1-year journey. And then, your part of the journey was, it's hard to believe you were only there from '84 to '88. Is that what you
Yeah.
said?
Just 4 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
it seemed like a lot longer than that. I mean, in a good way. I
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
you put out a lot of material in 4 years, man.
Well, that's the sad part. When you asked me to come on this thing, I started going in some old boxes trying to find, stories from my years at El Dorado. I found them from Weatherford and Muskogee, but I don't know if they're in a different box I hadn't found yet. But I can't find any of the El Dorado articles, and that ticks me off because other than Pensacola, I was there, longer than the other 2 places. So, I'm glad you sent me those stories of that week and stuff. So, brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you guys had News Times had a great sports staff. I know. I now know how small it was. At the time it felt like y'all had 8 or 10 guys, but it's hard to
Yeah.
believe 2 guys mostly did all of that. But especially with so many small schools, I mean, you're talking
Oh
Union
yeah.
and Mount Holly and those schools playing 40 basketball games,
Oh yeah.
and then Junction's down there playing 30 baseball games. Y'all had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And y'all did a fantastic job. That paper really followed the kids, so to speak, and that's what makes parents go buy them every morning, is knowing their
Yeah.
nephew or grandkid's going to be in the paper, right?
Right. Yeah. And with 2 people, basically only one of us could go cover a game. The other one had to stay in and take all the game calls from the other, teams calling in. So yeah, you had to pick the best game that you thought was worth covering and go from there. And fortunately, Junction City often had
Wow.
the best game to cover. So different times. You don't see
Yeah.
that anymore in the newspapers. Yeah.
And you got
Yeah.
out of it. Were you tired of creating scores late at night, or you just had run its course for
No,
you, or
it was kind of weird. I wasn't looking to get out. It just was kind of a bang bang deal. But the newspaper business was starting to change right after I left. So I got out at the perfect time. The first year after I left, in late 2004, Mobile started hosting a college football bowl game. It's now called well, I'm not sure what it's called. It was a Mobile Bowl. And bought a ticket myself, went there to watch. And it was a downpour. And I sat there. I had a big rain gear on from the jacket and the pants. I'm just sitting there drinking a beer, watching football, and I thought, man, this is the life. So
This is heaven.
yeah, I said I made the right call. I made the right call.
I've kept you for an hour and a half, man. I
Oh no,
can't thank you enough.
no, I've enjoyed it.
This will run the anniversary. Well, thank you. This will run the anniversary week, and it'll be May. I'll post. I'll let you know when it's going to come up. But you can
Yeah.
catch it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of that stuff. All right,
Yeah.
Gordon. I appreciate it,
Okay.
Gordon. Thanks for working with me on working around your job tonight. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. Really enjoyed it. It was a great run down memory lane, so to speak. Yeah.
Me too. I'll keep you posted on the timing of everything.
Okay. Look forward to it. Thanks.
All right. See ya.
Thank you for joining us on GenX Classic Sports, where nostalgia meets the thrill of the game. Tune in next time for more insightful discussions and memorable moments, brought to you by Pine Street Productions. Until then, stay passionate about sports and keep the memories alive.